Hi everybody and welcome to today's SME session with myself, Paul Merriman and Jamie Heaslip. Today we're really excited to have our guest on, which is Gary Lavin from VidHit. Gary is first founder and then CEO of VidHit. I'm really excited about this one. Everyone knows VidHit. Sure, everybody's tried them at this stage and likes them. So Gary, pleasure to have you here. Thanks very much.
Cheers guys, great to be here.
Excellent. Gary, you might just, I suppose, take us from the beginning. As we're coming out of COVID-19, in fairness, more of the interviews, and we did Tom Gannon's first interview, Jamie, it was all around, COVID, what happened. But as the weeks go by, it's getting more kind of COVID related. So let's take us on the beginning of this amazing journey and let us know how this all started.
Yeah, well, a lot of people would only see VidHit on the shelves now, and in the last 5 or 6 years. I actually created my first vitamin drink just over 20 years ago, last March. 20-year anniversary right at the start of COVID. How does that go? But it was a completely different product, still the same company, but a completely different product that we saw years ago. And for the first probably 11 or 12 years, I didn't make any money in the company. In fact, lost a lot of money. I think it was partly because the product wasn't right at the time. People weren't really willing to jump into a brand that they didn't really know. I don't think we were that experimentative as we are now. And for lots of different reasons. But the reason why I actually set it up was I was a rugby player, and my actual, what they call, I hate the term eureka moment, but it kind of was I was in a gym over in the UK about 23 years ago. And I saw a guy on a treadmill, and he was running for about 30 minutes, sweating buckets. And at the end of it, he had a sports drink in his hand, and he drank the whole thing. Now, what I knew through playing rugby, and that the public didn't know, was that sports drinks contain about 28 grams of sugar. And the human body can only process 25 grams of sugar, and the rest can't be processed through your liver, and the rest ends up in fat.
No way. No, that very good.
Yeah, so I was always anti-sugar. Well, not always, but from about 23 years ago, when I got a bit of knowledge, I knew that sugar was bad for you. Nobody else knew this, and all these sports drinks were huge in both Ireland and the UK, and young kids were drinking it, and their parents were giving it to them, and everyone thought it was healthy. And this horrified me. I was like, this is an absolute national disaster, and an international disaster as far as I'm concerned. And as we now know, sugar is bad for you, not just for your teeth, what people thought traditionally. And I just kind of thought there has to be another way.
Very good. Excellent. I never realised the 28 gram thing versus 25. That's news to me. And in fairness, my son Keane is a teenager, plays rugby at school and is big into his guy as well. But he loves the VidHit stuff. And in fairness, I'm going to have my hand up here as one of those parents that stood at the end of the G8 pitch, and when he came off, he'd be getting the Lucasade Sport in the garage on the way home, be doing something. So I'm delighted that he made that decision himself. In fairness, he likes the VidHit stuff and he drinks it. But I kind of knew, and in fairness, just for pure ignorance here maybe, I always thought Powerade was okay because the calorie count was quite low on Powerade compared to some of the other sports drinks. But then after reading that, that's still pumped with sugar as well. So I think these are all clever marketing campaigns by obviously the bigger brands.
Well, actually, on that point, Gary, like a question for you would be around. You mentioned that it wasn't originally at the start. It wasn't the right time, or people weren't ready for it. What do you think was the moment that sentiment started to change? Because obviously, when we were all playing rugby, when we were young, you had a lot of marketing showing, the Lucasades, the Powerades of this world, sponsoring actually big teams like Ireland, Leinster, soccer teams as well, GA teams. When was there a moment where you saw the shift change in terms of people's knowledge and understanding?
Well, it's funny Paul should mention his young flick kind of teaching him. This is what's happening. It's partly to do with Instagram. People are getting their information instantly. So most people nowadays follow some sort of a fitness guru who basically, Joe Wicks in the UK, and they're influencing young kids so much faster than it used to be reverse. Parents used to influence kids. Now kids are the ones influencing the parents.
Yeah.
But the real change for me happened. We got all our growth actually in the last recession. So our company turned its first profit in 2007, and we've turned a profit ever since then. So literally, as the recession was hitting in 2008, we did our turnaround. And I remember one day, for me, a point of difference was around the start of it, people were phoning up various different radio shows, and everybody was obviously going through an extremely hard time personally, and, you know, with kids and not making wages and all that kind of thing. And one of the things that on the Ray Darcy show that I was listening to, I remember him saying, you know, if you're going through a hard time, just get yourself a pair of runners from anywhere and go out and run. And I think the national psyche just kind of got a little more healthier back then. We certainly, ironically, we had our recession 10 years before that. I mean, as in the company, we were losing money for fun, although it wasn't fun, all the way through that for maybe 11 years. And then just as the recession hit, suddenly we made all our growth. And I remember getting up early one morning, I was getting on a plane to go, I think, to the UK. And I must have counted 30 people out jogging at like 7 in the morning. And the only time I'd seen that previously was back in 1991 when I lived in Australia. And I really thought I was like, wow, this is, you know, hopefully we're onto something here.
That's actually, I remember I used to see Ray Darcy, he lived far from me. And Joe, I never even copped that he was he literally did start that campaign. He used to run, even he had his babies there. I used to see him running with the baby and the buggy and that. But yeah, you're right, he really did have a massive impact and a change in people's psyche and getting fitness back in.
Yeah, well, exercise releases, and Jamie, I'm sure, knows a lot more than I do about this, but releases certain endorphins, makes you feel better about yourself. And certainly, you know, if anybody now is going through a tough time, which obviously COVID has brought up a lot of that, and, you know, you're sitting at home and you're depressed, it's very hard to actually get up and but if you put one foot in front of the other and get out, you'll find, you'll clear your head, get out and do whatever exercise you can. Now the sun is shining as well, and things will feel a lot clearer and a lot better. I mean, look, it's not for me to say because I've been through my own hardships and people are going through a lot of hard times. But, you know, I remember exercise is always a way out for me too.
Very good. Hey, Gary, just before we move on from what everyone knows is a success story now and a fantastic brand, a fantastic business, take us through those 11 years, as these sessions are supposed to, these SME sessions that we're doing are supposed to help people, obviously, that are listening to the podcast or watching the video on one of our social media channels. So talk us through, because a lot of people that are setting up businesses don't realize that it's okay not to make a profit. It's okay to be kind of cost some money and how that works. So talk us through, first of all, I suppose, the mental challenges that brought you for 11 years before you make. Because that's a long time, in fairness. And it's a pure sign of your passion for the business, in my opinion. But talk us through what that was like.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a quick reminder of what it was like for the last, 2 months ago when COVID hit, because it was just a bit of a shock. And I was like, wow, I remember what this feels like. And if you're mind to ask me later, I'll tell you where we are today. But yeah, I think just as well we have a team sportsman on the line here, because I think team sports were essential for that kind of thing. So as a young man, I was, you know, a good rugby player in my school, and I played kind of Leinster schools, all that kind of stuff. So that gave me an innate confidence, and probably a blind confidence, and some would say arrogance, that I thought I could do anything.
Hold on, rugby and arrogance, do they go together?
Yeah. Whoa.
Right. Going down a rabbit hole here.
Confidence and arrogance it's a fine line. Gary was just confident, right?
Oh, confident. Sorry.
It is. But definitely as a young man, I would say I was arrogant, and hopefully it's gone into confidence. I got older and realized that I'm not perfect. But a recent stat, which I couldn't quite believe, and a taxi driver actually told me, I have a young daughter, got in the car one day, taxi driver turned to me and said, oh, you know, you have kids? Because I was holding a present for her. I said, yeah. And he said, I have 2 daughters. He said, the most important thing is for them to play team sports. And I said, well, you know, that sounds like a good plan to me. And he said, there's a recent Forbes magazine article that states that I think it's 83% of women in management positions in the US all play competitive team sports. And I was like, that is so high, that can't be the case. And it is. And effectively what it says to me is that, you know, maybe in society we tell girls they can't do this, they can't do that. Sports helps you learn how to lose. It helps you know when you're winning, and just to kind of keep a lid on it. And it also makes you really competitive. So taking it back to where I was, I'm a competitive person, because, you know, when you're playing rugby, you want to smash the other guy and you want to beat him and you want to get on the team and all that kind of stuff. So that's what gave me the hang in there kind of attitude when most people would have given up. And yeah, it was hell for a while. You know, I couldn't open my door with the amount of solicitors' letters coming through. You know, we couldn't pay our bills. I got my house repossessed, got my car repossessed. Like, it was really bad. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I lost everything twice. Yeah. So, yeah, it was really ugly. I will have a Jerry Maguire moment now. I'll start to cry. But,
It's building.
Yeah, it was very, very tough. And one of the things that I learned along the way was that I can't do everything. So I met a guy who became my business partner, Ian, who could do the things that I can't do. So, which is basically any sort of accounts I'm a disaster with. I'm good with creating an image of the product and going out and selling. So he dragged me down to a forensic accountant, and she sat there, and this is probably 06, I would say, maybe 06 or 07. And she sat there and she looked at it and she said, look, your company is completely insolvent. I've seen 23 companies in this position. She said, I really believe in you. I've saved another company, which was a garden centre. I remember her words. And she said, you need to get out of your ivory tower, get in the car and go sell. And she said to my business partner, Ian, you need to just go and just stay with accounts. So I had to let go 3 of my sales reps, which was very, very, very tough. I still can't get used to that kind of thing. And I got in my car, branded it up, and drove across Ireland for a year, stayed in B&Bs and sold them to 3,500 stores. But I always say I had a south side disease, which is laziness. And up until that point, I think I had to go through a genuine, almost trauma.
Can we just pause for that quote?
Can we use that, please, as the strap line?
We're going to use that to make sure people watch this and listen to this. So it's called laziness.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I came from middle income family and went to a nice school and thought I could do everything, you know, and play rugby at a high level, you know, and I thought I was bulletproof. And it just took, you know, some kids just get things a little bit too easy, and I genuinely did. And I had to go through hardship in order to give myself a kick in the ass and basically get out and start to motivate myself to do something. And that was the point I needed. I mean, we were in serious trouble. So things were absolutely going down the pan.
Gary, when you look back at that time, right? Because that would have been like unbelievable stressful time, okay?
Yeah.
And not even that time of 06, 08 when you sit down with your new business partner and forensic accountant and then when you have to hit the road. But that whole 11 years, how did you manage the different stakeholders in that situation? Because a lot of people, when we'll get into COVID, but a lot of people would right now and over the last 3-4 months and going forward will have to manage various different stakeholders. We'll be coming under a lot of financial pressure, particularly, you know, in the hospitality sector, for example, you know, because we just don't know if the numbers will get back. We don't know how quickly numbers will get back to where they were, right? Where they would have been planning and strategizing. What are the key strengths that you have brought from that time to the recent present?
I think you have to be a really good salesperson. You've got to go back and you've got to convince everybody that the only route here is to keep going. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, just keep going. This will end. You know, all of these things end. You know, 9/11 for the airline industry, we thought that was going to finish. Planes, you know, that ended. Recession ended. If you can fight through this and hold on through everything, it'll come back. You know, all of these things, you know, whether we'll learn to live with COVID, whether we have to, whether we don't get a cure for it or whatever. You know, people are resilient. We want to get back to where we were. So you're just, you know, I'm an eternal optimist. When I was going through the depths of what I went through, I just see a little bit of life. So I brought it down to really simple things. I call it ladybird economics. I basically was never good at economics, and I just had to
another great
really
strapline for us.
I'm full of the wood. Listen, my products are full of strap lines. You want to read the back? But what I did was I literally brought it down to very simple things. I was like, okay, you know, what does the company need to work off? So let's say that was $1,000 a week back in the day. Okay, how can I make $1,000 a week? Well, maybe that's maybe that's getting 20 sales, and maybe for every store I get, you know, 50 quid. I've got to make, you know, and then bring it down to, okay, I have to sell it into 8 stores a day, whatever those numbers were. But I basically have it on the back of an envelope, and I'd go in and I'd drive around the country and I'd make sure once I got 8 sales a day, every sale at that point was just life or death. So it was literally like little incremental steps. Every day I'd go out and I'd get in my car and I'd make one step in Spar, Exchequer Street, and I'd go, okay, I just put 50 quid or 100 quid into our coffers. Now all I need is another, you know, 8 or 9 stores. And I'd literally bring it down to that really minute, because when you kind of get bigger, you miss those smaller details. Just try and cut away all the stuff and say, what do I need to go week by week? And look at your books, have a look at all your figures, and just get away all of the excess stuff that you used to think you needed and you don't anymore. So I just made it really, really simple. And little wins, no matter how small they are, keeps you going. So as an entrepreneur, you are naturally an optimist. If you weren't, you wouldn't get into the business in the first place. Because you wake up in the morning, you go, someday I am going to be X, even though, it could be ridiculous at the time. And that's the thought process of an entrepreneur. You're always optimistic. So you get a little win, it'll make yourself feel better. Whereas staying at home going, oh my God, it's over, it's just not going to help you or your family or anybody.
Gary, just one thing that strikes me is you don't come across as a natural salesperson, if you don't mind me saying. So you obviously have to learn that trade. So I always say that I think anybody that gets into business is a salesperson, whether they like it or not, because you have to sell the concept, whether it's to the marketing department or finance or a bank that's going to give you money. You have to sell yourself and sell your business. So it is that simple. You can't tell people to buy your product or promote your product, but you don't come. Would I be right in saying that you weren't salesy before you started?
Yeah, it's funny. I never had a problem, in a restaurant or a bar or a rugby club having chats with people and being in groups. But for some reason, you've hit the nail on the head. I actually had a bit of a mental block in cold calling into accounts, and hence I would do. Here comes another quote. I would do what I call skipping leg day. I would always do the easy things that I like designing my products and doing tastings and that kind of stuff, and letting other people do the legwork. And the most important thing you can do when you're in a business like fast-moving consumer goods like we are is sell. Nothing else. You can have the best accountants, you can have the best marketeers, online marketeers, whatever you want. If you're not selling day to day, your business is done. And I had to force myself to do it. And I used to just sit in the car and I used to be sitting there going, oh, I really don't want to do this, and everybody goes through this kind of thing in whatever job. It's every job has a certain job that you don't like doing. And I got over it eventually because I had to. And I used to say to myself every day, do one thing every day that scares you. So it's kind of like taking one step. So I'd sit there and I go, okay, here we go. And eventually I just broke that duck. And now, even today I'll be in stores, chatting to the manager, and if I see we're not on the shelf in a decent space, I go into Tesco the other day. I was chatting to the Tesco manager on Bagot Street. I do that kind of thing all the time. I actually really enjoy it now. So you can break the duck of anything, you can break any fear. You just have to have the motivation to force yourself across that line.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. No, I love that, because I do think that people to be scared of the word sales and that they'd be afraid of it. And you said you can sit in your ivory tower as long as you want, but you're not shipping a product, you're not selling something. And like I said, it's probably second nature to you now. Like I said, going into Bagot Street, Tesco's, or chatting to managers, because you put in the hard. I suppose that you get out of comfort zone. It's all about comfort zone. Really, getting your comfort zone and making sure you nail it.
It's amazing how many companies that chat to me just looking for a bit of sales advice are in the very same position. I can think of 3 off the top of my head of people who've come to me going, look, I have this brand, we're doing really well, blah, blah. And I can almost tell them how many stores they're in. And one of them in particular came to me and said, look, we're just about to sell a percentage of our company because we need more cash. The whole, turn and burn philosophy in companies, which I don't agree with. And he was kind of going, we're going for Series A funding. And I said, and how many, and I knew the answer to this, but I just asked him anyway. I said, how many stores do you have? And I knew the answer was 200. And he says, about 200. I said, well, there are 5,000 stores that you can get into across Ireland. So, what are you doing? And, we're designing stuff. And I said, this sounds very familiar. I've done this myself. The only thing that matters is sales. I said, cancel the sales process. And I brought it down to Ladybird Economics. And I basically wrote down, how much do you need every week? And it turns out that he actually only needed to sell into about 6 stores a day to keep his company going and to bring in more money, because he actually had stock sitting in his warehouse. And I said, there was 2 of them. And I said, guys, just get in your cars and go sell it. And I said, you're only in 200 stores. If you get into 400, it's going to take 6 weeks, which is no time. And you're going to double the value of your company. Like, this is like falling off. And he was kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I said, don't come back to me until you have 1,000 stores. So they haven't come back to me. So hopefully they do. Hopefully they listen. I don't know.
But the easiest option there, sorry, Jamie, the easiest option there was to get from the ivory towers to do the board deal and sell to somebody and bring it in, which is just an easy way out. But
skipping leg day.
Yes, skipping leg day. Brilliant. Sorry, Jamie.
How explain a little bit more. because a lot of companies would be in a situation where they need cash, right? So explain a little bit more to people about this, the turn and burn philosophy, and why you would be against it right now.
Yeah. Well, look, when I started this, there was no money out there at all. There was nothing. There was no money. You couldn't put a really nice video online and go out and get people excited and throw 50 grand behind your brand. So we were kind of looking, going, no, how are we going to do this? How I got money in was I had bought an apartment, and this is kind of where it all went wrong. But I had bought an apartment. The value went up. I went to the bank, got more money, and I threw it down the big black hole at the time, which was my company, and I funded it that way. And then I bought another apartment, and you know where this is going, and got more money and threw that down the big black hole that was the company. So sorry, where was the original question? Does that answer your original question, Jay?
Well, just why explaining the turn and burn philosophy, and why it didn't work out, and why, because obviously trying to get funding now for companies is difficult, even with the different government schemes that are in place.
I suppose, Gary, you mentioned that you didn't like the turn and burn philosophy. I suppose that's what it is for listeners, and why you don't like it.
Yeah, well, what's wrong with making a profit? I think, like the hardship that I had to endure, I had to be pushed into that. I think it's a really easy thing to do, to basically, it's kind of only a new thing since internet.coms, the last 10, 15 years haven't been making any money, and they just go back and get more money. When you're forced to actually cut your costs and cut your cloth and go out and sell, you actually perform a lot better. And a lot of these companies that come to me, I can see the profit at the end of their rainbow, and they just can't see it, and they just take the easy option and they go. So turn and burn basically means to me is that you set up your company, you get somebody to invest 100 grand, let's say, you burn through that 100 grand, and then you turn and you go and say, give us another 100 grand. Whereas they should be making a profit in that time, and they're capable of making a profit in that time. And I've met many of these companies who can do it, and I'm just like, it's right there, and all you're doing is, there's so many of these guys that start off at 100% that company. They end up selling along the way, and they end up with like 20% of their company, and they could get voted out, and they don't have any control anymore. And it happens regularly. People kind of go, oh yeah, we just raised X amount of 100 grand, and our company is now worth X or Y, but you've never got it yourself. So I hang on to my shares. We're a privately held company, and I hang on to my shares like there's no tomorrow, because I know the value of every small percent of that company is very important, because I've worked hard to keep it.
Brilliant. Excellent. That's literally an education 101 there. Go make your money rather than waiting for someone to give it to you or someone to invest in you. I love the idea that I always find that when people bring money into a business, Gary, or they want to bring investors in, that they do skip the bit of going and making it yourself and just working harder. Whether it's 6 weeks, like you mentioned about that other company, or even if it was a year, you're better off literally getting in your car or doing what you can to increase your sales, because no one would invest in a company that can't make money. So it's very rare that you need the actual money. So it's obviously good if you have somebody coming in and dropping 100 or $500,000 or whatever it's going to be. So I think
just to jump in there, you'd be surprised the amount of people that will throw money into something that isn't making money, because people in this we're all, most of us are kind of are optimistic. I have a friend of mine in the UK. There's two different guys actually I know. One of them has 3 juice bars, and one of them has about 7 coffee restaurants. The juice bar guy raised £1 million, and the coffee guy raised £2 million on Kickstarters campaigns. Oh, yeah. And I asked one of them, I basically said to him, that's a phenomenal amount of money, for restaurants, which is a very tough business. And I said, how did you do it? And he said, I spent 30 grand on a sexy video campaign. And I was like, you're joking me. And he goes, no. And the video is all like, East London guy walking down the street looking really cool. This is our brand, blah, blah, blah. And people just threw a lot of money into it. So it's still going on. People throwing a lot of money in.
Yeah, no, I think what I was referring to is more people, like as in maybe investors. An investor picks up the checkbook, or an angel, but somebody picks up a checkbook to put in. They can see there's life there, or something in the business, but you're probably not seeing it yourself because you're frustrated with maybe getting bogged down by not doing what you should be doing, which is selling, which maybe you're doing a bit of accounts, you just snow it in with so much shit readers. You can't see the wood from
Yeah.
the trees.
The other part about the investors, or where you're getting your funding from, let's call it, is that it's got to be a key partner. I think, really, Gary, is that fair to say? Like, when you brought in your business partner, Ian, like, I'm not like, whatever he brought financially, if he brought anything in that regards to the company, he brought a certain set of skills that were adding value to it, because like the finances is a tool, and you can get that from multiple sources. It's actually, what else are they bringing to the table? What's the value that person's bringing to the table? I think is probably the most important thing right now.
Yeah, I think one of my strengths in the early days was knowing my weakness, and that's, you know, my financial background is not strong. So I think if you are looking for a business partner and there's something you know you do really well, you've got to get someone who's the opposite of you, who's going to rein you in, you know, and do a completely different job. Other than that, you know, there's many instances where pals just get together and set up a business. But if your pal is the same type of personality as you, and he's a salesperson, and the two of you are looking at each other and you can't add, your company's going to go down the tubes. So, you know, you've got to be really, really careful who you choose. And it took me probably 8 years for my business partner to find me and me to find him, because I just didn't want the wrong person. I wanted someone who was the opposite of me.
I actually had a very similar experience with my business partner. One of my business partners, Ian Britton, came into the office one day, leaving a company, and someone was approaching him, and we just had a real honest chat. But it was a complete turning point for Pax for us, because he's phenomenal with clients. He's a lot of time, and I kind of able to steady the ship and direct the company the way I wanted it to go. But it was a massive add-on. But again, we waited for years to kind of find someone like that. And when people come together like that and they're good and they have their certain skill set in the company and they're able to do what they're best at doing, it does just blossom. And it's amazing when it happens. It's really good for you back there. So Gary, look, take us through then. So we're on the road to success now. We're on the road to really real brand now that everybody knows. Everybody's probably tried at this stage. So how is the company? Let's take us just up towards COVID-19. Let's get the COVID-19 in a couple of minutes, but sorry, go on, Jamie. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to. It's a similar question, but I wanted to just ask, kind of attack onto it in terms of, you know, where the company was pre-COVID. But Gary, obviously, the product is in more countries than just Ireland, so in a way, we're getting that scale that way, and you're obviously deleveraging your risk in terms of what markets you're in. Can you talk us maybe as part of that story of where VidHit was pre-COVID, and how you were innovating, either going to other markets or products or whatever, in terms of de-risking yourself of just being dependent on one product line?
Yeah, so I made an initial mistake. Made lots of initial mistakes, but one of the first mistakes that I made was thinking I could take on the world. So before I took on my home market, and I think that's a really important point, Jamie, that you touched on. So you've got to make your backyard your home, and so I look at it like sticking a flag in the ground and moving. If you can't put a flag and conquer a certain area, whether it be, you know, south side, north side of Dublin, and then go on to Dublin, and then go on to other counties, and then get the rest of Ireland, and then go north of Ireland, you're never going to be able to spin into other countries. I often get people saying to me, oh, you know, this is going to be really big in the UK. And I said, well, it's not big here yet, you know, so don't do that. I've made that mistake. Don't do the same as well. You know, don't make the same mistake I did. So I used to go to these international trade shows, and, you know, couldn't afford to do them because I wasn't making money in Ireland. And eventually then I had to stop, pull back, retrench, go and sell into 3,500 stores in Ireland, make the company properly profitable, and then go, okay, now that we are settled here, we've built a house here, not of straw, and we can now, you know, get in the boat, go across the UK and set up there. So that was kind of the first thing. And then once we did well in the UK, you know, we got into the likes of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Boots, WH Smith, all those companies, set up a team there. Then we're like, okay, now we can go somewhere else. So another weakness we found was that drinks, you will obviously drink a lot more drinks in the summer than you will in the winter. So in the winter, our sales will drop naturally by 30%, and they'll come back by 30% in the summer. So I said to the team, look, we're actually going to set up down in the Southern Hemisphere. So we set up in Dubai first, then we set up in Australia, and more recently we set up in South Africa. So now our dip is about, the markets still aren't massive, but they're all growing. So now our dip is about 22%. So we're pulling these things back all the time. So that's one of the, and that's from taking your head back and looking and going, where is our weakness? So that was another thing. Pre-COVID, we have grown at 30% year on year for the past 9 years. And 30%'s become bigger every year. So we were really looking forward to a really nice year. And we had one of our best quarters ever. And then suddenly COVID hit. And this is the journey of an entrepreneur. And to be fair, we haven't had any properly bumpy roads for probably 7 or 8 years. We've had, everybody has issues, but this was a proper hit for us. So our sales were we had almost zero sales in April and May. Certainly April and then May. So what was happening was, because we'd had such a strong first quarter, even though COVID hit in March, our March sales were still really strong. Because we had sold, off the back of our previous sales, we had sold a lot of stock into our distributors. And our distributors all phoned us up and goes, we've got mountains of VitHit here and we're not going to sell it because what are we going to do? And I was scratching my head going, well, I don't know. So, so we had 2 really bad months. And like I say, this will end. We're very lucky that we're in a position that, we're not a bricks and mortar company, that different countries come out of COVID at different times. And as soon as Leo was, on the TV saying, oh yeah, we're going to reduce these things, we knew that our business would come back. And looking at our daily sales from our distributor out, not from us to our distributor, because they're still working through a bit of stock, but we're actually about to experience either our second or best month in the history of VitHit, which is unbelievable. Yeah, the figures just came through yesterday, and a lot of that is to do with innovation, which I can talk about as well. We've added on about 20% on with new product lines, but I'm shocked at the amount of product we're actually selling from our distributor out, which means his stocks are going down, which means next month we now know that his stocks are down, and we will get our stocks in. And so that will mean 2.5 to 3 bad months, and the rest of it we'll be back out of it.
I just wondering, from a trend point of view, would you think that the increase in sales is due to, let's go back to Ray Darcy running around South County Dublin back after the last recession? A lot of people are, after getting a bit fitter, everyone's out walking. I kind of, when you couldn't do anything, do your whatever 2K radius, and it was 5K. So do you think people are picking up VitHit more than, they've maybe just taking a healthier lifestyle approach in the back of a pandemic, or what?
Yeah, it could. And look, I think a lot of health trends are going to get even stronger. I mean, when I started this, it was just that, it was a trend. This is now here to stay. People are choosing this as a lifestyle, and VitHit off the back of that is a lifestyle product. It's we've kind of proven over the years this is here to stay. Yeah, I mean, look, if you look, I've never seen in my lifetime, every day for 2.5 months, the very same headline with coronavirus in newspapers. I don't think in our history, maybe in World War, that might have been the case. There's usually different news stories that take papers every day. So this is absolutely in the public consciousness. Everybody is wondering how they can be healthier, how they can defend themselves, how they can keep themselves away from infection. So it's become a real mainstay chat, day-to-day dinner tables with everybody. How can we stay healthier? So we're very lucky that we are in that space. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to that.
Brilliant. Okay, so again, some companies, we said this already, Jamie, like some companies will thrive on the back of COVID-19 or even during COVID-19 because of demand and whatever way they're positioned. Okay, so I suppose, Gary, from the point of view of bringing us right up and the exporting and everything that's going on in the company, what's next? So you're coming out, you're going to have your biggest, probably one of the biggest months or two you've had in the company. So what's next, or what are you hoping to achieve? Like what's next for Gary? What's next for VitHit? Like, as in, actually, you know what? Can we go through one thing? I remember you were saying to me previously, the name. Take us through the name at the beginning, because I didn't realize this, and I thought this was brilliant.
And actually, just on that point, Gary, and like, cause it's kind of around branding and stuff like that. Can you? Because I know VitHit actually kind of kept their presence like above the line throughout the whole time in COVID. So can you obviously talk about where the name came from and how you got there, Mr. VitHit, and also then how and why you kept the brand very much in the public eye throughout COVID?
Yeah. Well, you know, like we were saying earlier, we're a profitable company. We weren't for many years, but we decided to use those profits to keep ourselves front and center, because no matter what you do, even though we're a small brand, we're up against, you know, Coca-Cola, Lucozade, Britvic, Red Bull every day for stomach space. So we needed to basically say, we're still here, you know, 24/7. So when a lot of people were laying off workers, we chose not to do that. And in Ireland, we kept all of our staff, and we actually made the decision that the company would take the hit as opposed to our staff. Now our staff ended up in month 3 ended up taking what I would consider a very small reduction in their wages. You know, because no company wants to continue to lose, but definitely the company took the lion's share of that, because we wanted to basically be ready for around now that we can just hit the ground running, and we wanted to, didn't want our staff to go through any strife. So that was the first thing. The second thing is the VidHit name. So one of the reasons, you know, I always, again, keep things down to Ladybird. I always think, you know, people say, well, you know, why is VidHit so successful? And I say, well, it's 3 really simple things. You know, a product has to look great, taste great, and be great. And this sounds really, really simple. But if your product doesn't look great, you'll never get it off the shelf the first time. If it doesn't taste great, you're never going to get it off the shelf the second time. And if it isn't great, after people read the ingredients the third time, you're not going to get a third sale. And it's very basic, but it's very, very difficult to actually get right. Okay. And so all through the first 10 or 11 years, we were changing branding, just getting it all right. But so I remember I was sitting outside the cinema distressed at the time, and I was saying, no, this company's going down the tubes. What am I going to do? I can't sell anything. And I just thought, okay, I'll give it one last shot. I will go and get students to give me some sort of research. So I went to a Dunleary Technical College and their marketing team there, and I basically said, look, guys, I'm going to sit in the back and you just discuss what my brand means to you. Now, the company name was VITZ, the brand was VITZ, so it was VITS. So I thought that VITS meant vitamins, right? So anyway, they sort of looked and they said, oh, it must be a German brand. People thought it was Weitz, you know? So I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I didn't see this. So for 3 weeks, I was lying in bed at night and waking up and writing things down in a notepad and going, right, how can I change the brand? What am I going to do? So I just woke up one morning and I was like, VidHit. I must have heard from somewhere before. I thought it was a name that already existed. So I got up out of my bed, got online, and I went to a company called register.com where you can register brand names for like 50 euros, $50, I think it was at the time. And I put in vidhit.com, waited like 10 seconds, and it popped up and said it's available. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I still don't know where the brand name came from. So anyway, changed the brand name. Went to a designer and walked into this designer, and I said, look, we used to have a really skinny bottle, and I found a manufacturing company that were going to do this bottle, and I just thought it looked nicer. So I said to him, okay, I said, it's a total blank slate. The only thing I want you to do is use the new name VidHit, and I want you to put it on that bottle. So I came back about a week later, and he had a storyboard, which I wish I'd have kept, but there were 6 designs on the storyboard. And he had these 6 designs. I looked at them and I went, don't like any of them. And he goes, okay. And I said, look, I'll see you in about a week's time, come up with a few more. And I was walking out and I said, you know what? I said, I'll come back. He was based in Dunleary. I said, I'll come back in a minute with the bottle and I'll just throw one on anyway. And I took the bottle, ripped the existing label off, and I put this on. And this was the product that I saw. And I was like, oh my God, I nearly missed it. So changed the brand to VidHit, changed the labels to this, and sales went up about 150% overnight with the same product in it.
That's that's mental. It's really,
you know what that tells me though, Gary, as well, like in terms of like leadership, right? It would have been very easy for you to be in, because it was your company, you're the founder, to be very pig-headed on it and be, or not pig-headed, but stubborn or whatever you want to call it, and go, no, it's
arrogant.
the one that makes the decision.
Arrogant. Southside arrogance.
but you know what I mean? But you went actually you went in, you got feedback, and you almost got like did a 360, you know, kind of feedback session from people outside of your bubble, your sphere, that kind of went, Witz, is that German, or is that what is that? You know what I mean? And then when you went back with the branding, again, you were confident enough in your product but you recognize your weakness in terms of, I need an outside perspective on this. And then
there's no one to listen, Jamie, isn't it? Really, it's no when you, like so many entrepreneurs, so many people can be stubborn. They don't listen to feedback and they just bull kind of forward on what they think. So
which is a positive. A lot of the time, people have told me not to do something, and I go and do it, and it works. So there's no formula for that. But I suppose the only formula was I was losing money. I knew it wasn't selling on the shelf, and there's nothing worse than walking into a store and seeing your product still on the shelf. 2 weeks later, you're going on. So I knew there was something wrong, but the product tasted great. So that was, and I wasn't making money, so I had to make some sort of a change. But another interesting one was I also had another brand at the time called Organic Fanatic, and I had that in stores. No one would remember it because it was a very small brand, but that was taking up about 80% of my time, and Bid It was taking up about 20% of my time, because to get organic ingredients is a nightmare. And I again made another decision around that time. I was trying to fill the shelves with two brands, and Bid It was more profitable and probably had more room to run. And overnight, I just killed Organic Fanatic. And I got a few emails saying, we loved your brand, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, can't do it, go. And so sometimes you need to know when to cut and fold and run,
And in terms of now, like Gary, coming out of COVID, I know you kind of brought a new product to the market just as COVID was kicking off. Time is everything in this world. But in terms of the lessons from COVID, let's say, what you learned as a business, and then the trends you see going forward, and the innovation / adaptation that you guys did as a company, what do you think is staying? What do you think is changing? And where do you see things going into the future?
Well, first of all, I'm all about innovation, but we tried cans before and they didn't work 3 years ago. And one of the things that actually Niall, one of the partners of Fulfill, said to me was, he said, look, when you have a brand extension that doesn't work, cut it immediately. We pulled it from the shelves. 9 months into it, we lost, I think we had to destroy 120,000 cans. The product just wasn't quite right. The packaging wasn't quite right. The flavoring wasn't quite right. So you can't be afraid then to go back at it. And so we went back at it over 2 or 3 year period and got it right. And so we started working on our new sparkling Vid Hit probably 18 months ago. And it took a long time to get the right producer, get the right look, get the right products, all that kind of stuff. And we released it then right at the start of COVID. And I was, apoplectic over it. I was going, oh my God, the timing is horrendous. We thought we were going to be left with about 150,000 cans, which we were actually going to give away to the public, around now. But the cans just took off and people are really liking them. And actually, we've actually run out of cans about 3 days ago. So we have another production, which we didn't think we'd have to produce till August, September. And we've completely run out of product now. And the cans at the moment, as we speak, for this month's sales are actually about 18 to 20% of our turnover in Ireland. So we've had a brand extension, which I thought might add 7%, and they've added on 18 to 20%. So we are absolutely thrilled with that. Trend-wise, what do I think is coming? And sorry, just the other reason, there's so many reasons to do cans. It's sustainable. The product is sustainable, which is a big thing at the moment. And around 50% of the population, both in the UK and Ireland, don't drink still drinks. They just drink sparkling. So we weren't really hitting that part of the market. So, that was kind of a white space that we needed to go into. Trends wise, I think we always have to be careful with trends, because if you look at the craft beer industry, that was a trend over the last 7 to 8 years. Yeah. And there must be 30 to 80 Irish craft beer brands. And a lot of them, I don't believe, sadly, will survive, because everyone is fighting for this tiny little space. And when I first created Vid Hit, obviously there was
so I think you mean Vits.
Vits, yes, correct. Yeah, don't remind me of that again. Yeah. There was a white space there, and I wasn't going in. I didn't want to create another Club Orange or Fanta. There's companies that do that very well. I wasn't going to create another Cola, because there's companies that do that very well. So don't jump into a space that everybody else is in. I'd rather be a small shark in a swimming pool than a large one in an ocean. There's so many There's so many brands that are just nipping away at each other's feet, and I see two trends which I think will last, but I don't necessarily think that companies will last trying to capture those trends. So the first one is kombucha. I like kombucha products. I believe in it, but I don't want to be one of those guys. There's going to be 100 companies between Ireland and the UK at that space, and maybe 2 might survive, 3 might survive, and that. I don't like those odds. I wouldn't get into that. And then a little bit further, there's kind of probiotic gut space, which is almost like that, and I think that's a good area as well. But CBD drinks as well.
CBD drinks seem to be on the increase coming from the States, don't they? They haven't really hit here all that well, have they?
Yeah, there are a couple of kind of underground brands, but there's probably, as I know, there's 4 to 6 companies currently creating CBD drinks in Ireland, and that means there's probably 20 or 30 doing it in the UK, and they're all going for space that we don't know how big it's going to be.
Yeah.
So instead of that, why does nobody try and create a healthier chocolate or healthier sweets, or just find a space that's there and just make something healthier? I just don't understand why the gold rush, everyone tries to get that one nugget as opposed to just spread it out a little bit.
It's funny that like people who've been listening to this are going to be like, oh, they're saying it again. But we are seeing so many similarities, even though we're across multiple verticals of different people we're talking to. Mm-hmm. And one of them, two of them you've actually touched on. One was like people kind of going after the gold rush or the trend. And we were talking to Colin Harmon from 3FE, and that was more around the amount of cafes that were opening up over the last 12, 18 months, you know what I mean? And how they actually didn't do it from, they were taking money on, going for that prime location straight away and trying to scale up that way, as opposed to the way Colin did it, which very similar to yourself was like, it was a one-man band for a long time, and then, kind of mastered what he was doing and then scaled. And then in terms of, second point you're talking about in terms of trends, and not rushing into it and actually just make going for a bigger market. So Tom Gannon touched on that in terms of crisps, and that's where Cali came around. They're like, the crisp market is huge, however they're so bad for you. Why don't we just make this healthier, like we did with protein bars and snack bars? So it's better to kind of, I suppose,
the formula is there, Jamie.
Yeah, like have a go in a big market.
The blueprint is there. The blueprint, isn't it, really, for success? And that's why these sessions are quite good. I hope they give value to people, because
it must be something in the human psyche that makes people kind of see that there's something new is happening. I've read about it in newspapers. Why don't we do that? But everyone is. I always think that if you have an idea, there's 10 other people with that same idea. There's 3 other guys who are going to do that idea. So you need to do it today and get on it as soon as possible. CBD happened in America 3 years ago. Kombucha in America happened 15 years ago. You'd want to have been faster if you wanted to pick up those timings. And look, there is going to be, out of those 6 companies, one of them is going to win.
Yeah.
So best of luck to them. But I wouldn't fight. In all honesty, I want to see entrepreneurs succeed, in no matter what space you're in. But just the gold rush thing, it's just a very, very, very difficult, and we've seen what's happened with breweries, and a lot of them are being shut down right now.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of time, energy, and focus away from probably what you're good at as well, Gary, which is probably the big loser, I suppose, when you go look for the gold rush. Gary, I just noticed I've been looking at, I caught myself literally with my jaw hanging sometimes listening to you, because it's been an intriguing story. I must say it was an absolute pleasure to have you on with us, because again, I know everyone knows the brand, and I said about my young lad Keen drinking it, and I've tried it, and it's lovely. And just one thing I will say is I love the bottle top, because you can get some, if you're thirsty, you can actually get a proper drink out of it. So from a market point of view, that's quite up its worth. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on with us. And we're delighted, myself and Jane, to bring these type of stories out to the public through our social media campaigns, obviously, and our channels. So Gary, pleasure, absolute gentleman, and that was I really got a lot out of that as an entrepreneur myself. So I must say thanks a million.
Thanks, Gary.
Cheers, Paul. Appreciate it. And the one last thing I'd say to people is just, if you're starting your own business, just don't take no for an answer. Keep going. Brilliant. Love that one. Excellent. Cheers, guys. All the best.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks. Great to see you. Cheers. Good to see you. Cheers. Bye.
All the best. Bye. Jamie, that was brilliant, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that one.
I tell you what, that man should have like a little book of quotes. He came out with so many good nuggets. The bit hit quotes, big quotes.
What I will say? My daughter Charlie, and she's flying in school and she's really good at business studies. But I didn't realise the 83% that you said of Forbes magazine, a taxi driver told. I'm dying to tell Charlie that one. 83% of women in management positions are from team sports. That's deadly. It's amazing.
Yeah, and look, Gary lives not too far from me, and our daughters are a similar age, and I remember him telling me that one, and it kind of resonated because look, I played team sports. I have been part of high performing teams for 20 years. And you can see when you go into businesses like in that coaching format, and you see how some teams are dysfunctional. You can sometimes see people haven't played well with each other before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how you learn quite a lot about yourself, how to work with others, and then how you get the group to, go towards that goal that you're aiming for, how you get them all aligned. And those kind of qualities of working with a team and leadership qualities, because everyone in that team is a leader effectively, are really, really important in that business world to be a properly functioning, high-performing team. And that's why you learn a lot of that playing sports, from a young age. Look, that's why I'm a big advocate. But as I said to my wife, I was like, look, it'd be great if she plays team sports. But to be honest, if she's not into it, she's not into it. She can do whatever she wants. But as long as
there's no force in there.
Obviously. But I just think they're a great avenue for kids, as well as keeping them fit, keeping them healthy, because childhood obesity is
a thing,
is a thing, and it's improving. And in terms of trends, like Gary definitely hit it on the head in terms of watching sugar and his weight. Like we talk about being really, really niche ahead of the trend, and he was that. But Jesus. Like to stick for 11 years making profit.
I didn't know that.
Talk about being early on a trend. Like
I was gobsmacked when he was saying he was losing money for 11 years. And he went in, he got the house repossessed and the car repossessed, and he still kept with it. And it's an amazing entrepreneurial story. It really is. It's literally like something out of a book, isn't it? That you read about from an entrepreneurial point of view, a business book. And that's why I love doing these sessions, because as an entrepreneur myself, a business owner, I'm actually learning. I know we're trying to push the kind of stories out on their social followers and hopefully get people really good lessons, I suppose, or let them listen into this and learn something for their own business. But I just got bundles out of that. And like I said, he's FMC and I'm finance, but it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of like where he's at, and a lot of people obviously who are business owners, he showed a lot of really good leadership qualities there in terms of communicating with his staff, having a very clear vision of what he wanted to do, and a really good passion and purpose behind the brand. And then he had the self-awareness to realize, okay, I'm not good at this thing over here, so I'm going to get someone in. And then also, while he had a very clear vision of where he wants to go, he was like, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? I'm going to go external. Okay, we'll change the name. And then it came back to the branding. I'm going to go external. And then, while someone else came up with the idea, he trusted his gut then, because he was so clear on what the mission was, you know what I mean? And while somebody in a restaurant or something might be like, what the hell does that mean to me? But I think it's been really clear on what your business is about.
And even the fact, remember he said as well, which I loved about the Southern Hemisphere, that his sales were dipping in the winter.
That's genius.
%. Like, it's so obvious. Like, it's literally like, duh. Then when he said it, I was like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought that. Just bring it to it falls off from 30% to 22%, which is just
and they're emerging markets for him. So that means that's actually going to get his sales will get steadier as those markets grow for him.
Of course.
But I love how he and who was it that told us about this first? I can't remember. Maybe you'll remember one of the brands or one of the guys we were talking to previously, where it was Grania, and this was in relation to the burgers.
Peugeot,
yeah, how they went, we're going to conquer this real small area first and be really good of delivering those burger kits, which they've evolved now into s'mores kits.
Oh, see that,
anyway,
I actually sometimes don't even click on the Peugeot Instagram page. I know I was going to get hungry, so I myself.
I'll wait till I tell you about another delivery that I just got this morning off the back of Peugeot. But anyway, how they mastered mastered their area and then went to Dublin, and then, you know, they went a little bit wider, like, oh, that's not working for us, and stayed.
Yeah, stayed
there.
niche.
And similar to Gary, where he went, started in South County Dublin, North County Dublin, and then he went, okay, let's go outside Dublin. Let's go outside, you know, and then mastered Ireland.
Yeah.
We moved on to the UK, did similar in the UK, and then the other
I think that's a step that a lot of entrepreneurs don't take. And I've been on the wrong end of that stick as well. Where you've got so much enthusiasm and you believe in the brand, you believe in but you just, it's hard to be patient as an entrepreneur. It's hard to take a step back and wait for things to naturally happen. But that's exactly what Gary did. But it's literally a master. Like, it was just brilliant. Like Colin Harmon as well. When you interviewed Colin Harmon, he said these guys should be literally at the top of the lecture halls, chatting to business students and chatting to entrepreneurs. So look, if you are still listening to this or you are still watching, thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you got something from that. You definitely did. There's no way you didn't. So that was a great one. Right, Jamie.
My takeaway was Ladybird Economics. Skip, what was it? Skip leg day.
Skip leg day, and then the other one was what I actually really did like was where he just he kept calling it all. Well, the company began the black hole. They kept getting money and throwing into the black hole, which was the company.
Or no, what was the other one? His Southside laziness. What an addiction to have.
That's the best one. And sorry, the other one was the arrogance and rugby players. I'll leave you on that one.
Come on.
Sorry, confidence in rugby players, Jamie. Sorry.
Well, you know what? It's funny though, but it's. I loved how you could almost see how his exuberance of youth kind of changed as his story went along.
Yeah.
And which is like, I mean, it makes perfect sense. You know, you think you're invincible when you're in your early 20s.
Yeah.
How he was forced to mature really quickly along the journey. You know what I mean? True business. And there's a lesson there for people going, you might think it's glamorous and all that stuff now, but what you don't realize is the work. You know, I've said it before. It's that Hemingway phrase: gradually, then suddenly. You know, you had to go through a lot of crap.
Yeah. You think,
and then all of a sudden, people are like looking at the end product, going, "Oh, this is amazing." But it's like,
it's easy. And that's what I love about people thinking it's easy. You know, but you know, you're right. And actually, just to finish up with this one, I love the thing about jumping in the car and just selling to every store and just making 50 quid for every store he went into. Like, and that's what makes companies, and that's what makes really successful entrepreneurs, because not many people do that. They sit in the ivory tower and they won't get their hands dirty. So
compound interest, Paul. Compound interest. Are you willing to put that work in every day to build it up?
Yeah, that's all it is, and don't skip leg day. Which is the best stuff from a business point of view. Jamie, pleasure as always, man. We'll chat to you later.
All right, come on.
Cheers, bye.